This is part of the buildingSMART International Summit here in Berlin 2025. Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Proctor and I will be your moderator. Details of the session are on the screen. We will be hearing from Alexa Mitchell from the Infrastructure Domain Steering Committee on open standards for US bridge projects, and we will be hearing from Eivind Pagander Tysnes on data quality in the AEC industry in the age of digitalization. Before I hand over to Alexa, I'd like to remind you this is a hybrid event. If you're online, your microphones will remain muted, and if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use a chat box and I will prompt you to do so. For everyone in the room, welcome. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and we will use the microphones that are available. We're scheduled to last for 90 minutes and the session is being recorded and will be made available in the replay section of the Ring Central app as soon as possible. I also need to bring to your attention the information that is coming to the screen now. buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted. The process for their adoption is transparent and standards that are developed do not favour any particular provider but are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. With that, I'd like to pass to Alexa.
Thank you, John. Hi, welcome everybody. Everybody have a good lunch? Yes? Yes? You're not going to fall asleep on me, are you? Welcome. No, thank you for being here today. My name is Alexa Mitchell. I'm with HDR. We are an AEC firm doing transportation services in the US, Canada, and Australia. But I wear a lot of hats in my position. I am an Infra Domain Steering Committee member. I am also part of the buildingSMART USA chapter, and I am a BIM consultant working with many of the state departments of transportation in the United States and some of our transit agencies. I have a design background. I'm a roadway engineer by profession, but I've been doing BIM consulting for a long time, and so I like to describe myself as a BIM and openBIM enthusiast. All right, so over the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about the U.S. vision for a national standard that we are trying to deploy, practical application of how we are testing those standards today, and what we are doing to develop an openBIM workflow that we can share with all of our stakeholders. The idea is that this workflow would work for all types of bridge projects that are kind of the bread and butter of what we do in the US, which is maintenance work. So bridge replacements, not fancy mega projects, right? So the 80% of the work that we do in the US is reconstruction and maintenance site work. And then I'm going to share some of the key outcomes and lessons learned to date because we are still doing the project. And so we'll share as much as we can. All right, let's start with why are we even doing this? I think I can say that we all have a common problem. And the problem today is that all the people doing projects in the design, construction, and even the asset owners currently use proprietary software, and it's very difficult to share information with one another if we're not using the same technology stack. And so we want to get to the point where we can choose whatever software of choice we want and still be able to provide the quality files that go downstream to the next stakeholder in the life cycle of project. So we came up with a solution at the national level, and it is a national partnership of over 20 state DOTs and the Federal Highway Administration. We've come together to put the resources together, and a little bit of money from everybody makes enough money to solve a common problem, and that's what we're trying to do. So the national partnership to fund these standards that can be adopted, deployed, and maintained by the individual state DOTs as a group, implemented by the technology providers, because if they don't implement it, it doesn't help us at all. And accepted by the industry, by the supply chain, so that we can encourage the use of innovative practices and just be we do better work. So about 7 years ago, a group of bridge engineers in the United States came together and established a vision to be able to enable consistent, reliable, repeatable digital information exchanges for all transportation agencies for specifically bridge design, construction, and asset management. And this is a vision that had been agreed upon by 50 state DOTs, by the way, and the 4 territories as part of what we call the AASHTO organization, which is the American Association of Highway State Officials, Transportation Officials. So part of the project has ended. So the state DOTs came together as a group and created what we call a transportation pooled fund. And so with the funds, we, HDR and some of our other partners were hired to create the standards that now we are piloting. And so those standards, the products of what we're calling phase 1 of the project, was an information delivery manual, information delivery specifications, content for the BSDD that is currently uploaded as a preview under US Bridge, and documentation to help our software developers and our project teams on the adoption of these standards. So what are we doing? So the next step was to figure out, how do we adopt these standards that we developed? It was very theoretical work, of course. You know, it took a long time. The US was very new to BIM and the bridge industry and openBIM, right? So we were trying to learn how to do BIM, and then we said, oh, there's this openBIM thing, right? And so now that we have something tangible, we worked with 2 state DOTs, took up the challenge to pilot these standards for the first time through a federal grant. And so the Federal Highway Administration provided a grant to fund this project to test these new national standards, provide support to the pilot teams, training, gather documentation, and pass it forward, but also to get feedback on what we should be improving on the standards now that we put them to practical application. I always say it takes a village, and it really has. This is the combined team. The HDR team is the lead consultant, but we have lots of partners that I like to acknowledge here today. And our sponsor, the contract holder for the Transportation Pool Fund, is the Iowa DOT. And so that team has been working for years to develop the standards and collaborate with the buildingSMART community at large to figure this out. On the right is the larger team for Pennsylvania DOT. Iowa DOT has something similar, but the Pennsylvania DOT grant is fully funding the openBIM initiative. Iowa is funding other initiatives as part of the grant as well. But I like to acknowledge that, you know, the DOT is investing a lot of time and funds with their own resources. The pilot project teams, there are 2 pilot project teams on that project, and HDR is helping Iowa DOT with their pilot project as a designer of record. Our industry partners, we couldn't do this without our industry partners. They're part of the team. And the support team, which is the digital consulting team for PennDOT that HDR is leading. And I am glad to point out that Joe Brenner is in the back, and he's joining us today. He is from Michael Baker and one of the pilot project team's leads. All right, so how did we get started on this? So we started with education. So, like I mentioned, we're very new to BIM and openBIM in the bridge community, and we don't have a lot of resources in the US that can help us educate at large. And so we took advantage of the buildingSMART accelerated program to hold a series of webinars and a workshop where we brought the project teams together. We brought the software developers that we typically use on those projects, or that the department had chosen to use for delivering those projects. We brought them together, and also the project managers. So not only the technical team, but the project managers and all the stakeholders, to educate them, because there's different audiences when you educate people, right? There's the project managers that need to understand why we're doing this, why it is important, why they need to support it, and what they need to ask for, right? So that they get what they need. So it was really, really helpful, and we got a lot of value out of that. So that was step number one. It was the education part. And so we were able to go through the entire generic digital workflow, right, of creating IFC files, validating them, and then taking the IDS and understanding what an IDS was and checking those requirements. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the pilot projects. Like I said, there's 2 departments of transportation, but there's 3 different projects, 3 different design teams with different levels of competencies when it comes to bridge modeling. And so you can see that these projects are fairly simple projects. There are bread and butter type of bridges, not very fancy. It's just what everybody crosses every day and takes for granted, right? It's not a signature bridge or anything. But they all have similar scope of work. It's a total bridge replacement. So we're removing the existing bridge and then putting a new bridge in its place with minimal road work. The use cases that we are using is quantity takeoffs. We're developing the model to do quantity takeoffs and cost analysis, design authoring and briefing, design reviews, digital layout, BIM to field. And of course, we are, one of the projects is actually using the IFC file as the contractual deliverable. So, and I have asked Joe to stick around to answer some questions on that, since that is his project. But the process that we're trying to go through as part of these pilot projects are, number one, like I mentioned, let's teach people how to develop a 3D model that is meant for construction and not just for the development of plans. Okay, because you model very differently if you know it's not just going to be a set of plans that you're deriving. And so we had one of the teams was a little more behind on that practice, and so we have been able to take different levels of expertise and still have the same results, and that's what we wanted to test, a repeatable process. As part of the project, we want to establish and document all the openBIM workflows. Every single team chose a different approach to model their bridge, different software, with the same outcome, right? And so we wanted to really figure this out. There's a lot of trial and error, and document what worked, what didn't work, and then share it with the world, right? And then advertise the files, like I mentioned, for construction. 2 of the projects are delivering the IFC for information only. And then Joe's project is contractual. We want to work with the construction teams. I can tell you they are not familiar with IFC or openBIM. And so we're going to have to work side by side with them to make sure that they understand what the IFC files are, how they can use them. And so the design teams are being retained through construction to assist the construction teams. And we're working with the software companies that support construction teams. Primarily, Trimble is a big company that our contractors use today, but other software vendors as well, like Topcon. And through that process, we're developing training, and we want to upscale the training to see how we can deploy that at the state level first, and then national and international. But like I mentioned, all of the documentation is going to be shared. And the Infra Domain Steering Committee met on Monday, and we really are looking for opportunities to gather examples, files, documentation that we can all get a hold of and analyze to see what are the commonalities and the differences. All right. So now that we know what we needed to do, what did we actually do? So part of the Transportation Pool Fund for the standards put together a very high level workflow. And I say very high level, right? This is step 1, 2, 3, and 4. We provided this to the teams to help us understand how you would have to follow this high level the workflow of developing the model, adding the requirements to the IFC objects, preparing a file that would pass the validation service, go through the process of iteration in the validation service, and then test the files against the IDS to check for compliance on the information requirements so that we could feel confident that the contractor was going to have what they need to do the work. And so high level, and then the next step is to, okay, so how does that work in each of the software packages that the project teams actually used? And it was different for every package that we used. And I can tell you, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. So we have this expectation as engineers that you can create your model, push a button, and the IFC automatically comes out and it's perfect. Okay, that is the expectation. It's not. It's not that, right? Not saying that not saying that it cannot be done. It can be done. But I think it's important to educate people that it takes work and you need a little bit of investment to bring people that can help you analyze the file, set up the software, configure the software correctly so that you can get the information that you want. And if there are challenges, how to work with your software partners to make it better. Short-term solutions, long-term solutions, we take it all. And it's been great. It's been great working with our software partners, very committed in helping us find solutions because these are real projects that had to go to bid in a short amount of time. And so the number one priority was to make sure the project was delivered, not that we did openBIM, right? It so happens that that was what facilitated the delivery. So I just wanted to mention that. And so we really went through a very elementary type education, right? Like, you have your geometry. If you don't set up your objects properly with the proper classification, with the proper properties, then you're not going to get what you need on the other end, right? And this is just a visual example of that, right? So we often see, right, this building element proxy. That's what we want to eliminate. And the standard allows us to walk people through, this is what we want to see at the end, okay? And I know that many of you have talked about this today, enriching your models with the data dictionary. Merbig, you talked about it today a little bit. And then there's just other things, right? So that was part of it. And let's be real, right? Like I just said, it's the standard is still new, relatively new, and there are still some challenges with the alignments and different types in 4.3 that are important for infrastructure projects. And so I think understanding the IFC readiness for different types of products is very important. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to truly partner with your software partners to make it work, to understand how the software works in the background so that you can configure it appropriately. And some you may have to do more work in some of the products and not as much in others. So it's just being able to have that discussion and that very frank discussion with your technology partners. And so the data conversion really depends on what software you use and what version of the software that you use, right? So this was all new for us, and it may not be to you, but it really was for us, and it was very eye-opening to see, because we've been hearing for years, oh, like, yeah, you can do IFC. There's lots of projects around the world they're delivering IFC files, and I'm like, can't be that hard, right? Well, now we're finding out that it takes a lot of work, but it is possible. All right. We also use the information delivery specifications. We found a lot of areas of improvement as we went through the teams, understanding how to make this better, maybe how to break it up a little bit. I know, Karen, you and I have talked before that maybe the IDS had too many specifications to check. Maybe parse it in chunks would be easier for some of the testing that we were doing. So, but we had something to start with, and the ideas that came out of the pooled fund is a template, and it's a national template with the idea that it helps all the DOTs at the 80% level, and it is expected that each state may add content and requirements to the ideas, and then project teams may do the same. But we would like to provide a template to start with, because all the states have similar projects, similar types of bridges, and they have a lot of the same suppliers. So a lot of it really applies to all the DOTs. Very flexible. We talked a lot about the structure of the data. That was something that was new to us. We really didn't understand at all that there was such a thing as engineers. This was very new to us. And so the pool fund also created this kind of guidance in terms of the IFC hierarchy, how to set up the project, how to set up your software. We started, of course, and I like to talk about standards in kind of a pyramid type style. You start with the international standard, and we try to use as much as we can out of the schema itself and all the relationships. Then we have the national standards, the AASHTO, and we have come up with a number of those properties and property sets, and we're finding out that maybe they were already covered in the IFC schema. And so we're doing a lot of comparisons to how do we make it more lean and take advantage of what's already been done. And then on top of that, we had things that were very specific to PennDOT in their workspace within the Bentley software, and added some more things. And I am going to rely on Joe a little bit here on that later if you have any questions. But we worked together with the DOT. The DOT had already really good open bridge modeler standards. And so it was just about how do we make those standards now align with the IFC deliverables. So yeah, so this is just another illustration of the things that we were teaching people: class types, custom property standard, PSET, spatial mapping, and let's convert it to IFC, and then let's go to the next level. So as we get more deep, right, we test the file. Oh, lots of errors, maybe no errors, lots of errors typically, right? And that helps us understand what are errors, what are warnings, what are some of the things that we really need to pay attention. Is it because the engineer didn't set up the model correctly? Is it a software problem? And so you start really digging into it. You correct the issues in the file and retest and continue that iterative process of all of it. And then once one service from BSI, then at that point, let's move to the IDS checks. And so these are just some screenshots of some of the documentation that we had, the test files you selected, You click. It's very easy to use the validation service. If you're not familiar with it and you haven't tried it, we do encourage you that you take it. We learned a lot about what those errors and warnings meant. Again, right, the different categories of errors. This just illustrates that we went through the steps, and so we do have those examples now. We have reports that we can share. And more documentation, right? It's having the right correct spatial mapping relationships, and going back to providing the information that was necessary. There's a lot of things that we also deliver that are not part of a 3D object. And so we had to figure out, how do we deliver that information? Because if it is not in the model, but it's part of the project, how do we go about doing that? So we did quite a bit of that. And iteration, until we get to the point where we are passing the things that we need, that are important for that work. This is an example of the ideas that we have. So, like I said, we ended up with a large template of the ideas that has, like, I don't know, 30, Joe, help me out, 30, maybe 30 specifications on the ideas along those lines. So it's very large. So we are learning, and we're going back to update it to take away some of the things that are not relevant, and leave the things that are more relevant. All right. Key outcomes. The workflow. I know it's small here, but we used a lot of different software packages in this. And so 3 teams, different packages, and a lot of great collaboration. I'll just say that, right? But we had the authoring software. We were able to export the files. We had to use third-party applications to clean up the files, and then deliver the files. When we go to construction, of course, the construction teams have other preferences for what software they want to use. But the key here is that we prove that you can use many different applications and still be able to deliver your project with the same intent, with the same design intent. But at the moment, it does require quite a bit of work. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that. At the end, we're very excited that we had 3 different teams that now understand the openBIM process and have leveraged the software of their choice that their teams were familiar with, and master their craft, right? Creating documentation that now we can share with other people. But the documentation is not only good that we're sharing it, but is giving us that repeatability. And so the contractors are going to be getting better files from us because it's more consistent, it's more repeatable, and people do understand that they're more than just files, lines, and points on a file, right? These files actually have important information that can be used downstream. And the one thing that we learned is that we need more examples. It was very difficult to have conversations with our project teams when they didn't know what is the product that I'm supposed to be given at the end. Give me an example. And we didn't have those examples. And so it was very difficult. It also is, those examples are also great for working with your software partners, because at the end of the day, I can say, this is what I'm expecting out of the software. And so you have a go by, was what we call it, right? Go bys, that now we have something that is very tangible that we can discuss. When we go into preparing information requirements, like if you go to a group of stakeholders and you start asking questions about what they want with a blank canvas, it really doesn't work. But if you start from a picture and you start saying, okay, this is what we can put in the model, is this helpful to you? What is it missing? Are we putting too much, too little? Those conversations happen much more easily. And with that, I am going to, I don't know, are we taking questions now or later?
Yeah, we can take questions now, Alexa.
Yeah, and before I take questions, Joe, is there anything else you would like to add?
Thanks, Alexa. No, I think you've hit on all the key parts. I think just the collaboration piece and understanding the timelines. At the end of the day, we still need to deliver these projects, right? So it's not theoretical at this point. It's where the rubber meets the road. So that was the key part, and maybe just a lot of the manual manipulation of the IFC files afterwards is really what we'd like to remove that step. Because when we found, we had other teams that were the first getting into now checking models instead of checking their 2D sheets. Very experienced engineers know their stuff, but we needed to have the ability to update models, check that, and be able to get those models back in a quick response just to meet deadlines. And between that and trying to teach engineers how to review a model instead of plans at the same time, that was a key challenge for us. And I think moving forward, that's one thing I would just highlight even more, the need to have those clean IFC exports coming directly after the software. So.
Now we will take questions.
Yeah, do we have any questions for Alexa and Joe?
I have one. So you use the validation service to kind of check if the IFC were correct. So how did you fix the IFCs? Did you open them in Notepad or did you go to the authoring software, or did you
I'm going to let the engineer that created the files answer that question.
Yeah, so different teams did different approaches. For the teams that I wasn't directly involved with, the projects I wasn't directly involved with, they use Bonsai, even Trimble Quadri, I believe, to go back in and modify those IFC files directly. In our particular case, we worked directly with the vendor. It was a cloud-based software, model authoring software, so they were able to make updates quickly. So as we got the information, we sat down, worked with their developers and said, hey, we need XYZ fixed. And we got responses pretty quick and be able to do that. So we got it validated.
That sounds helpful. It would be really unfortunate if you need to take the Notepad.
Text file and go into Notepad and do that. Yeah. Yep. That's what we want to avoid.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Fantastic presentation, Alexa. Supporting the same question, how you track them? I mean, you got the validation, some items, so you just go item through item, or you could simply use BCF and tag that object saying you have to exchange that or improve that part. Have you used BCF for that? Thank you.
And I could take that. Yeah, that's the next step. We really would like to do that. We did not for these projects, but that is something for BCF for a couple different applications. But that being one of them is something we would really like to get into.
Yeah, thank you. Because we had several cases in the building domain when we found not only design issues but also document issues on site and attach that as a ticket, open topic on that, and send back through BCF to contractor.
Yeah,
as a recommendation.
Related to the BCF, we have talked to a lot of software developers that can help us with that. And the challenge has been today, nobody supports alignments. And if I don't have station and offset, I can't really use that product. Or at least the people that we've had show us projects, they don't show us that part. They only show us a building, right? So I don't know, Karen?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, because every time you have an iteration with a software vendor fixing an error, with the validation service, it might be fixed for all of us. So thank you very much for pulling that. And have you, when you worked with the validation service, did you see a need to have it offline from the buildingSMART servers or wherever it's hosted, or did you just leave it where it was? Because there's a big focus on information security and not spreading files
Right.
around the world now. So
we did not worry about that. Again, our primary goal was to get the project out. I think that's a very valid concern and something that we need to look at. Again, we've been so focused on getting the projects out, but that is definitely something I know our clients are interested in as well.
great, because that works quite well. We tried it in Sweden, but and then one third thing, this opens up questions like standard bridges. You have all these old infrastructure, old bridges in the US, I suppose. Do you know if you've looked at standard bridges in relations to IFC and just to have a standard product with parameters, etc., to be able to share?
A standard product, maybe.
Standard product, standard bridges, standard. Well, we can have that at another session, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure. I mean, a lot of the we do have standard bridges in some states. Every state has their own standard bridges, right? And so they have their standard drawings, and a lot of these models really follow the standard drawings, and very, very seldom, I guess PennDOT is very unique, but a lot of other states, their standard drawings are pretty comprehensive, and that's what we use to model the bridges.
Yeah, and now I understand you a little bit more. Yeah, exactly what Alexa said. We have, our pre-stressed bridges, beam slab bridges. We have our steel girders, and there's some other states that have theirs, but everything is, again, 50 different states, 50 different sets of standards at least. And then you have different districts within those states that do things a little differently. So as far as standardization, we're really looking at the export. The modeling that's been a big challenge in sort of workspace setup and getting everything working there. So that's maybe a different conversation, like you were saying, but we're just focused on the export and the structure.
Ronald?
Thank you. Thank you, Alexa, for this brilliant presentation, very clear, and also for sharing your practical experience. So I was also wondering if you could give us some insights about the next steps you are going to take. What's the roadmap for the future? Are you going to deep further? Are you going to do a more neutral on bridges, or are you going to look at other objects you would like to investigate? So could you give some insights, please? Thank you.
Yes, I'll talk about the national project. The Transportation Pool Fund is moving forward with a phase 2. So we're using the lessons learned and the results from these pilots to update the current standards that were for the design to construction. After that, the next step is to append, if you will, or work on top of those standards to add the standards needed for other exchanges like fabrication and as-built are the next 2 priorities in that order, because they build upon each other, right? So that is our focus for the next 3 years, is to do as much. And now that we have data sets, that was part of the challenge we had at the beginning. We didn't have the data sets, but now that we have the data sets, it's an easier conversation with the stakeholders to create those information requirements. And we believe that it's going to go a lot faster than it did in the first phase. And it's going to be very iterative. We're going to, very agile approach. We're going to try different things and work with the software companies, work with the project teams and all the stakeholders to really move it forward. So this project really is accelerating the adoption of BIM in the US, not openBIM, but just BIM, because we are able to demonstrate the value of these standards. And so it's very, very exciting. So on that level, we're doing that. On the PennDOT project, using the federal grants, the next step is to start figuring out and start working with the contractors during construction. And I'm going to let you talk about your project in a little bit, but all the projects, like the ones in Pennsylvania, are in the procurement process right now. And so we can't share those files until that is over. And then the one in Iowa is going to procurement here in the next couple of months. So by the end of the year, the procurement process should be finished and starting construction in the next construction season for each of the states. And so we're going to follow those projects. So the design teams are going to follow their projects, and the pooled fund is going to follow the projects to document information so that we can create the training, we can create, we can document the lessons learned and work with the software developers to make it successful. So at the national level, that is next, and I don't know about the projects.
I can talk a little bit about the PennDOT project that we will be following through, and part of the PennDOT scope is to create that digital as-built, and that will be an IFC file as well. We're going to be working with this particular owner has a lot of their own custom systems that they use for asset management, maintenance operations. Even within the bridge, there's several different systems. So we will be working with them and their domain experts to get that information digitally as much as we can to automate that for the process. And then just to maybe add, you mentioned next steps on other assets. Like Alexa, I wear several hats. The other, I'll put this hat on now, is there's also a companion pooled fund that's called BIM for infrastructure. And that is basically everything other than bridge. So we're working on kind of following behind. The bridge is ahead, but we're following behind and coming to the same place and learning from each other. There's a lot of great collaboration there. So it's also being done on other assets, not just bridges in the US.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. So I just want to ask very simple questions, but during the design process, we used to use so many different types of BIM software, authoring software. So whenever we convert the original file to IFC file, so it is not easy to convert the different types of the IFC file to original file to IFC file. So my question is how many software formats, original software formats, so convert to IFC files in your converting systems?
I can take that one. So there were, in terms of the overall file format, we worked most of the project team started with Bentley. So that would have been a DGN file format. Now that came from two different tools within Bentley. We used OpenBridge Modeler, or several of the teams use OpenBridge Modeler for, let's call it, the solid bridge components, and for reinforcement, Pro Structures, which is another software within the Bentley ecosystem. The other format, my team actually specifically worked with openBIM, which is that's the cloud-based product vendor that we worked with to convert that IFC file or to get an export from there. I don't even know what their proprietary format is. They always have to go to different, either DWG or DGN. So from that, it was several vendors, and then using Bonsai and some of these other editing softwares is another level of that. But
maybe a last question for Alexa and Joe before we move on to Eivind, or have we finished?
Thank you.
Okay, so we've finished.
Hello, everyone. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm going to more talk about the theoretical information, the data quality, and why it's so important. Eivind Pagander Tysnes. I'm discipline manager for BIM in Bane NOR, and also the co-chair of the railway domain. Just a disclaimer up front, I'm not a bridge engineer. I'm a track and rail engineer. So bridges is absolutely something I do not know, except for the fact that I have a background as a former carpenter as well. So I know concrete and I know the reinforcements. Data versus information, what's the difference? If you look through dictionaries and everything, data is information about objects without being organized into a system. If I just give you the 35, what can that be? It can be 35 degrees, but that can be in a circle, it can be Celsius, it can be Kelvin, it can be Fahrenheit. It can be a lot. We don't know. It's not set into a system or context. If you put it into context and a system, and we put information on it, we can say concrete cover, 35 millimeters. Too little for a bridge, more than enough for an indoor construction. What I've done is I just added the context for what that number represents. And if you go to the Oxford Dictionary, it says that data is just bits and bytes, more or less, and the information is data put into context and given meaning. I think that's the most thing. Information gives meaning. So when we are talking about good data quality, we're actually talking about good information. I think we just have to remember that. Usually we talk about both things on and off, but we're talking about good information. We're talking about the information. So why is good data quality important? We get better decision making. Why do we have to have that? Yeah, the better we can make the decision, especially as an owner. I have 4,500 kilometers of track, mainline track, back home in Norway. And we have to, with limited funding for maintenance and operations, we need to have good data and good information to put in that funding on the correct places. If that's changing a bridge, building a new crossing, siding, whatever it is, we need to have good information. We also get efficiency and cost saving. If you have good quality, we can save money by doing the right work at the right time, or we can actually, instead of something breaking down, we can change it out before it breaks down. Through trust, we get trust in the information. We know that the information is good. We can use it. We trust the information. We trust the data. And compliance with laws and regulation. The more control and the more I know of the data, I know if we are compliant with laws and regulation, and also analysis and insights. If I have good quality data, I can use a lot of more analysis and insights than if I have bad, because I can trust the output of the analysis. So what do we need to do to achieve this? We need to define what we mean with good data quality. We need to have the quality criteria, accuracy, completeness, consistency, all those things. We need to define them. We also need to have good processes and routines. We need to involve the people. We need to involve those who are responsible for the disciplines, for the bridge. It will be involving the bridge department in Bane NOR for us to get the correct information they need. Use right technology, and we have to measure and improve continuously. We can't just define something, finish it up, and then use that forever, because someplace down the road, something changes and we need to make adjustments. So, standardization and sound process lead to good data quality. I think that's important to remember. If we have those processes and we have standardized, we will get good data quality. So a lot of examples, they're all from current or just completed bridge projects or railway project we have in Norway. So they are bridges or structures that we have built just using the IFC models. So contractors are just using IFC models to build these. And I'm not going to show you good data quality. I'm going to show you bad data quality. This is the same property. All of those define the same property. It's impossible for our controllers to look. They have to look 7 different places to find the same property. And if you look into our requirement, This is the definition. These projects are legacy projects, so there's a reason, but this is probably from the same consultant, so same company. And again, same property. According to our requirements, it should be this. And why does this happen? Because the consultants they don't have their routines in order to do this. There should be no problem for them inside the same department, inside their own company, on the same project, to have one property of the definition instead of having 6 or 7. An even worse example, I don't know which is which, but one of them is the reinforcement model, the other one is the concrete model. This defines the pouring stages. They're not defined correctly. So it's impossible for our controllers to know which elements are defined or belong to the related pouring stage. So what do we have to do? We'll have to modify, we have to work around, and that's the frustration we see outside when we're building those bridges by our controls. They have a lot to do to manipulate the data, and we can do that by, as an owner, we can get that better by being the one setting the requirements. This is how you define things. This is it doesn't help if they manage to write it 2 different ways, because it will not help. Then we will have to go back in and say, we have already defined the syntax. You have to define syntax. So here we have every property twice. So there's a double of amount of properties that should be. Anyone can spot why there's twice? There's a very small difference. Half of the properties are millimeter in parentheses, and half of them is millimeter in brackets. What's correct for data type for units? Brackets, yeah. So we should only see brackets there. But considering that, especially me, I who knows the context there, everybody should already know that it should be necessary to have it there, because we're talking about concrete cover, and in Norway that's always defined in millimeters. So here they have put up 4 unnecessary signs in the property name. We could eliminate it, because in Norway we know that the concrete cover is millimeters. And unless we define that in the requirements, either in a data dictionary, an IDM like the US Bridge has done, we will always get this. And it starts with the owner and asset owners that define their requirements. Because you will never, at least in Norway, you will never get the consultant to define it similar. I usually say, if I have 5 companies, I have 5 + 1 definitions of the same properties. So how do we improve the data quality? We need to standardize. We need to use the standards we have. So, which object do you have? What you call objects? And I put up the relevant standards down there that we see them. So ISO 12006-3, ISO 23386, 23387, and BSDD as data dictionary standards that you can use. And level of information need. You need information, and you need it when? Who needs it? IDS and ISO 7817 define those kind of stuff. 7817, so level of information needs standard, that also defines geometric representation and documentation, while IDS only is alphanumerical information. So we need to be better at doing this to get better data quality. When you need the information, what documentation you require, and system for classification. In Norway, there's pretty much two standards we use for classification. We have the ISO AEC 81346 series, also known as the Reference Designation System, or RDS. Especially in the power supply industry, is very commonly used in Norway, and Bane NOR is looking into that. Then we have the TFM. I don't have any. It's tverrfaglig merkesystem in Norwegian. I don't know what it's called. What I would translate it to in English, but that's designed for buildings. So on the railway, I can't use it properly. But the buildings we are own inside Bane NOR uses that, and we have a standard for it. We need to establish processes, data governance. Somebody needs to be responsible for this. You have to have people responsible for everything. We need to improve the data quality of our existing structure. In Bane NOR, in our asset management system, a bridge is defined as the bridge. And then I have defined the span. That's more or less how the bridge is defined. I need to improve that to get better data quality. And we need to ensure that correct data quality for the new bridges. The better quality I get on the new bridges, the better analysis I can do. And good data quality is an enabler. We can make standardized templates for analysis. We can have standardized dashboards for monitoring, information takeoff. And for us, which is important, most of my controllers, they work on a lot of projects, or somebody gets sick or have to leave for absence. It's not uncommon in Norway that somebody is gone for a year for parental leave. And just like this, having standards with good quality is so much easier to step in for somebody who has to be away for some shorter or longer time. And we spend less time searching the information because we know where to look. We have trust in the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Eivind. Do we have any questions in the room for Eivind?
Of course.
Thank you, Eivind, for a great presentation. I've seen a lot of the work that you've been doing in Norway, and among other things, you published your KIM database a couple of years ago. Is it a year ago now? A year and a half?
Around July 4th of last year, I think.
Okay, so it's soon it'll be a year and a half. How's it going? The KIM database, that is an IDS, set of IDSs for the industry to follow.
Yeah. So the KIM is our Bane NOR's requirements for information modeling, directly translation into English. What my team says is it's gotten better over the last couple of months. And the biggest reason, as far as we understand it, is that, well, as what we see has happened over the last 4 to 5 months is that the software vendors are starting to catch up.
Thank you.
So that's what we see. But we get better results, but we're also pushing them harder.
Yeah, so you're pushing them and you're pushing them, and we're sort of,
so
pioneering.
And our requirements is not an IDS file, it's we have a database, but the output we give to our consultants and contractors are sets of IDS files. And we also have our generic requirements, which have text written about how the geometry should be, depending on the phase we're in.
All available online in Norwegian.
Yeah. Even though everything is in Norwegian, everything is accessible if you go to banenord.no/BIM. Very simple for everyone.
Any more questions?
Would the buildingSMART validation service catch those issues and errors that you found? Is that how you discovered them? No, Alexa's shaking her head no.
So no. So the errors I showed with all the properties, an IDS file would catch that, not the validation service. So, but as I said, one of the projects I showed here, that was a project I've been building for 4 or 5 years, opened up now 31st of August of this year, and they were using 2x3, and they've been working with this for a long time. The other project, as far as I am, is a bridge that was put into place last Friday. It was built separate on the side and moved in with our multi-wheeler, and we'll put into operation, as far as I know, next week or the week after. And both of those has been done by the same company, so it shouldn't be that way. But IDS files will catch those, because you will get an error that you have defined the property file wrong. That property shouldn't be here.
But there were doubles, not triples or 4 or 5 or 6,
Yeah.
like you had in the first slide.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Thank you. So you had the unit in the property name. Why?
That's my question when I saw it as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have a unit in property name.
Yeah. But I mean, also, do you require that property to be of type length?
So we are trying to do that in our database, but right now the database, the 1.0 release is track and rail, signal systems, telecommunications, electrical, and overhead catenary systems. Okay, so we haven't published the construction structures yet, but all of those has a data type, more or less. And unit, if I'm not wrong, but okay. I can't remember from the top of my head.
Okay. So in IDS doesn't talk anything about unit. It only talks about measures. So yeah. So I would assume that you would say that this property is a length.
We would use the correct data type, yes.
Yeah. So then it actually doesn't matter if it's in meters or millimeters. In the IFC, I mean,
no. Yeah. But as far as and that's why I'm saying that in Norway, it's common that you only use millimeter for concrete cover.
Sure, yeah, that's how it should be displayed. That's at least.
But when it comes to volume and areas, you should know it. You should have defined if you want square meters or square centimeters.
No, it's.
Use yourself, because this is passing from solid.
Yeah.
He knows.
Okay, so the thing is that if you for example take if you want to sum those areas together,
yeah,
and some of them are, I mean, if there are all areas in IFC file, then that's fine. But if you just have properties that are of, say, double, floating point numbers, and you say that this is an area, but you don't, and then some of them are square meters, some are square millimeters. If for some reason you would want to sum those together, you couldn't do that. But no. If you just say that they are both areas, then you can sum them together.
Yeah, and that's why that's why knowing which unit you also have is important in the long term. I would say.
I disagree. It's a display thing. Yeah. But yeah, we can have a discussion about that.
We'll invite you to a coming session next.
Alexa was first in America.
You were first.
I have a question for you and anybody else in the room. Sounds like many of you are working on your standards and you have standards. So you're talking more about enforcement, right? So how do you go about enforcing that? So open question, right? But the second part to that is, how do you document that the quality was performed in such a way that can be audited later? Has anybody thought about that? That's a big deal for us, is auditing our quality process. And so nobody has figured that out yet really well.
I should have somebody from my team here now to answer that question, because they're usually the ones doing the quality control when we receive the models. But I see Jan-Erik and Frederick down there has hands up, so maybe they can answer for that as well.
Probably the same answer, I guess. Yeah, we do that. I'm working in an engineering company, and of course, also working for Bellonor. And we do audits on our models continuously, either via Power BI setup or something, that we check all the parameters all the time. So this is like a continuous process. Every time you get a new model or a new export, you check them out and see if they comply or not. So I don't really see the problem.
And I could pitch in that the bridge authorities in Norway, they allow for BIM models. So they don't need any drawings anymore. And they comment back with BCFs. So they go through the BIM model and comment back with BCFs. That's the official process for approving the bridges. That's super important. Then you don't need drawings anymore.
And what we also do in my team, when they go through everything, if they find things to make the BCF and send that back to the engineering firm or the contractor, depending on what kind of contract we have. Since I have Solibri, I'm not wrong, but I think you can make an export of the IDS validation, right? In Solibri? Yeah. Yeah. So they also do that, put out the BCF on the IDS validation check. So that's also a possibility. So they do that as well. So we are thinking about, so whenever we control, we go through and check the models that we receive. We always make a report that we send back and put it in as a documentation of what we've gone through and what we have and our findings. If we don't have any findings, they don't receive a report, because then it's okay.
And you document that everything is
Yeah, in our project management system. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh. I think we need to start introducing ourselves, because it's...
Fredrik Kjellman from Multiconsult engineering company. I would just ask if you have different IDSs for the different phases.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, good.
So I said five disciplines with 6 phases. So there's a total set of 30 IDS files now, and we will have more phases and sets as we progress. And I know that one thing we were already changing, which will be in the next release, is we have a lot of generic requirements that we're actually taking out, that are put into the disciplines now. We will take them out and put them in a separate set of requirements. So those will be put out on a separate side. So there will be 36 files at least next release. So yeah, so one, because I don't think it will make sense for us to have one file per discipline for all the phases, because it's too much.
Great. Any more questions? Can I just, this is the last infradomain session, if there are no more. Oh, Merbeck, you did find your question again. Okay.
That's another question. As far as I remember, in the ideas, there is a possibility to cover units of measures. There is. You have, you need to define data type, and as soon as you choose data type, let's say for air tightness, we were using infiltration, and there is a specific user for lengths. For lengths, you have to use like classical lengths, right? That's what you need to define. You have your property thickness, but you need to use probably if you go to BSTD, it will be IFC real, but in schema, it will be IFC positive length measure. Length measure, IFC length measure. So there, if you go to the IFC documentation page, it should define, usually I guess, matters, but then it's not so bad to mention in your dictionary that you still require a millimeter, so it's not a bad idea.
I don't think the definitions are in meters and millimeters on data type. It's only length measures.
Yeah, length measure.
And those kind of stuff. So I think that's like time measure is just time measure, but it doesn't say if it's seconds or hours or months or days or minutes.
I think the units are defined very early in the beginning of the file. This is something that we've talked about. I don't remember which meeting, but it's all in there, and we're just learning now, aren't we? Yeah. That just because there's about 60 people in here. We have some software vendors, Jan Erik and Pasi. How many more? Who else is a software vendor in here? Well, of course you are. Okay. Yes. Good. Okay. Are you counting this, John? No? Okay. How many contractors? Yeah. Oh, good. And consultancy firms? And owners? Good. Did you raise your hand? Okay.
I was explicit.
What about like university researchers? I know Jim and a few others, yeah. And Yunsuk. Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Do you want to wrap this up, John, or?
Yeah, I think we've finished with Alexa and
Online?
Eivind's presentations. Is there any words that you want to say? This is the last infra domain and railway
Alexa is
domain
wondering
session.
if there are any questions online. Sorry for interrupting.
There are no questions online. No, we have about 10 people online. It's been pretty consistent all the way through these sessions.
Good.
No, do you want to say anything before we finish? Or?
Not really.
No.
In the closing plenary, I'll be there representing us all in the infra domain, trying to say what is important to us right now.
Okay, well.
So welcome there.
Thank you to Alexa and to Joe and to Eivind.